Okay, so now we're live for this last event of the spring conference. So we're live, of course, in the marketplace, and also for this one, we're live on YouTube because we thought we wanted to share this event with as many people as possible within our members and our friends. So without any more explanations, so this is the Screenco wine tasting. So Jennifer, I'll let you tell us a few words.
Sure. Thanks, Stefan. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone who's on. We've got about 26 people who have joined, hopefully more soon to come. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Screenco wine tasting event. As Stefan mentioned, it's the last event of our spring conference week. We're really honored to be a sponsor of the spring conference. Every year, we really believe in supporting Fenestration Canada and the association. So that's why we're here. I hope everybody is going to enjoy the wine tasting, even if you did not receive a bottle of the lovely wine that was sent to many of us from Mission Hill. Please pull out a drink or a bottle of wine and join us anyway. And I look forward to seeing everyone once we turn on all the webcams. So thank you.
Good. So actually, I'm going to proceed and turn on the webcams. And while I do that, Ingo, you may start your presentation. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I got that now.
Go ahead.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here at Mission Hill. I know that some of you have gotten yourself a couple bottles of wine, and please feel free to have yourself a nice little glass because this is a great day to just have a glass of wine. I don't know what the weather is like over there, but right now it's sunny and warm here in the Okanagan, and I'm made sure that I have myself a glass of wine as well. So we have 2 bottles of wine in the package, I believe, and you don't need to drink both of the wines today. If you want to save one of the wines for a little bit later on, you can, please. But otherwise, let's just enjoy a little sip. I'm going to share my screen right now with you, and we're going to do a little presentation. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an idea about here in the Okanagan, what we have here. I don't know if you have been to the Okanagan before. I don't know if you are planning on coming out here, but it really is a very special place out here. We make some incredible wines, and we are very, very happy that we can share this with you. There we go. So again, welcome to Mission Hill. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to call out, to unmute yourself and just make a nice little call out because I don't have my chat window open right now. So, but here we are, Mission Hill. When you come to Mission Hill, it's a very, very special place that we have here. This is a winery that's been here since the 80s, although the wine history here in the Okanagan has only been really since the mid 30s. So less than 100 years of winemaking history here in the Okanagan, but it really has only been in the last 40 years that wine has taken off. Here we have the Okanagan Valley. We can see where the Okanagan Valley is. It's a very short little length of area here. It's about 200 kilometers long, a very long, narrow strip. In here, we have about 10,000 acres of land that is grown under vine, and we currently own about 1,400 acres. So just a little over 10% of all the vines that are grown here in the Okanagan. Now, what's quite special about the Okanagan is its topography and how it's diverse from the very north to the south. Here we have some of our vineyards at the very, very top, underneath the little screen the little ribbon that we have at the top there. That's where Mission Hill is located, and on the other side of the lake there is DeHart, and going down south we have Naramata Ranch, our Fairview Vineyard, Golden Mile, Red Barn, and then down the very, very south is our Osoyoos Bench. So that's right down on the US-Canadian border. Now, what's unique about the Okanagan is this long, narrow strip and the temperature change is going from the north to the south. So in the northern part, so from Naramata Ranch and all the way up to the winery, right along the lake there is what we call our cooler climate varietals growing there. So there we have, there we'll have our Riesling, our aromatic whites, some Vidal, some Riesling, some Chardonnay is growing up there, and Pinot Noir. And then as we go further south, we're planting more the varietals that are just more intense, that need more of that heat and more of that sun. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Merlot, those all grow very great down there, as does some Chardonnay as well, and Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. So that whole stretch, it's really, really unique and quite different. And to give you an example, the comparison-wise, from Osoyoos, which is our southern property here, comparing that to Mendoza, to Niagara. Some people might be familiar with Niagara, Bordeaux, and Napa. We have sort of a cool little chart here that gives you an idea of how we fare in the whole grand scheme of things as far as wine goes. So on this here, you can sort of see that compared to Bordeaux, our rainfall is about 1/3, right? Our relative humidity is on the lower end compared to some of these other places, but our temperature and our degree centigrade days is quite in line with all these other parts of the world. So that's what makes the Okanagan here quite unique. We're a little bit warmer than Niagara and a little bit more degree centigrade days. It's actually kind of interesting because we actually get 2 extra hours of sunlight here in the Okanagan over Napa Valley, which is kind of a cool thing about the Okanagan. And that's just because of the way the axis of the earth is set up. So as far as tonnage goes, and this is something that people always go is like, how come we don't see our Okanagan wines in other parts of Canada, let alone internationally? Well, this gives you sort of an idea. California has a copious amount that they crush, and New Zealand is a little bit less. Even Ontario. Ontario is 4 times as much grapes than we do here in the Okanagan. So that is a massive reason why we don't have our wines in various parts of the world and various parts of Canada as well. And what's happened right now is the Okanagan, we're actually going through, well, here for the winery, by the end of this vintage, so the end of the 2021 vintage, we're going to be 100% organic. So that is going to increase the percentage of organic vines in the Okanagan from its current state right now of about 7% being organic to up to 20% is now going to be fully organic here in the Okanagan, which is massive. By any comparison throughout any other part of the world, we will be the largest under vine organic area, more than any other parts of the world. To give you an example, California is 1.4% organic. New Zealand is, I think it's at 5% organic. So that's huge. That's huge for the Okanagan. And that's because we feel that it's better for the grapes, it's better for the property, better for the land that we go into an organic method here. This is a cool shot. This is one of the shots I really, really enjoy. I hope everyone's enjoying their glass of wine. I'm going to have a little sip of water here. So this is a cool shot of our winery. That's our bell tower right there. So that's a 12-story bell tower that we have here at the winery. And in behind it is Lake Okanagan. The lake here is one of the main reasons why we grow grapes so well here in the Okanagan. Even though this lake is only about 200 miles long, it is about 700 feet deep. So it is a huge, huge, deep lake. And what that does for us is it creates a more moderate climate here. So in the wintertime, it's not going to get as cold. And in the summertime, it doesn't get super, super hot in the northern part of the property or the northern part of the Okanagan Valley here. So this acts as basically a heat sink that just allows us to keep nice, moderate temperatures. And this is one of the main reasons why there are grapes being grown in this area, because we don't get that massive cold freeze in the wintertime. I love this view. This is the view when you come into Mission Hill. So as you're driving up the driveway, this is what greets you at first. The whole point of the property and the architecture that's here on the property is to make you slow down, relax, enjoy, and just take it all in. When this property was first built, they had the trees on either side, and it took forever for them to join in the middle. And they've just started touching tips just in the last couple of years. So it's quite magical here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the wine. So the first wine that we have right now is the Sauvignon Blanc, the 2020 Sauvignon Blanc Reserve Riesling, or Reserve Sauvignon Blanc. So this wine is coming from a few of our properties down south. So down in the southern part, down in Osoyoos and all of our area there. 100% Sauvignon Blanc. This does have a little bit of a concrete egg component to this, and a little bit of French oak as well. Let's give this a little swirl and take a look. So wonderful light color, nice straw light color to it. And aromas, wonderful aromas. Aromas of like herbaceous grass and lemon, lime, pear, apple. I mean, these are wonderful sort of notes that we get out of this here. And then give it a little sip. And a lot of that apple, pear, and that lemon citrus sort of notes coming through, that comes right through onto the palate. Delicious, delicious. This wine goes so well, pairs so well if you're having anything light, like a salad, to something even a little bit heavier, like if you're having like fish, or if you are going to do even chicken or something lighter like maybe veal or so, this would go fantastic. It has great acidity. It'll cut right through anything that has a very thick sauce on it. So if you have a nice little bit of sauce on, a hollandaise sauce or something, this will be perfect for this. So back to the winery here. So as you drive up, we have a nice little traffic circle there. This is sort of a nice bit of an overview of our entire property here, where we have the restaurant on the left. We have our bell tower. You can see that on the right-hand side. We have our loggia. We have our keystone in the bottom left there. So this is quite a large property. And right there in the center is our amphitheater. Now, in previous years, we've had concerts here with numerous peoples. We've had Tony Bennett, we've had David Foster, we've had Jewel, Sheryl Crow, the Gypsy Kings, so many concerts that we've had here. Right now, we obviously can't do concerts. We haven't done concerts since last year, but we're hopeful and ever hoping for that we'll be able to do this again in short order. And in this concert area here, we would have up to about 1,200 people. So that was quite a lot of people, and they would just have a great old time. We'd have tables set up on the patio or all along the grass there, and people were able to enjoy all of the sounds and the sights and the views. I know in previous years, we've had some forest fires, and there's even been people talking about how they would see a concert there, and on the other side of the lake, you can see in the background there, the forest fires would be happening, and you'd see the bombers coming down, picking up some of the water and then spraying it all onto the brush and everything on the other side. Quite a magical sight, even in that sort of instance. This is the keystone as we're coming up to the property, and this is what you will be first greeted when you come in. On the left, to the left would be the terrace, to the right would be our boutique where we would check in for all of our tasting experiences, and then we would have you just take a look and enjoy the property. I love this view. Some people have asked if they can go up into the clock tower. I haven't even been up into the clock tower, and I've been here for about 3 or 4 years. We don't really allow too many people to go in the clock tower, but it's very narrow, and it is quite a leg workout if you think that it is 12 stories high. So here's a piece of art that we have here. Anthony is quite a collector of art and antiquities here. And we've actually had some exhibitions that were here on the property. And this is from one of the, Natalie de Clossier. And she did a number of pieces of art, and she actually had an exhibition here on the property. And this is one of the pieces that we've kept here on the property. And it all represents the movement of life, and also about the barrel. So that is actual, that could be one of the barrel rings from, one of the rings from one of the barrels. So she does a lot of art with that. This is our terrace restaurant. Our restaurant is only open during the summer months, or from spring to fall. So we just opened up our restaurant just just at the beginning of May here, and we're just getting ready. It is an al fresco dining experience there. So it is totally outside, and that's why it's only open for part of the year. But it is a top end restaurant, and has received many awards for their meals. And I just had dinner there. It was a 4-course meal. It was wine matched with every course. And then I even did a little cheese platter with did some dessert wine, and it was fantastic. Here's a view on the other side of our property there, the other side of the terrace restaurant there. You can see the vineyards just in front. These are just some of the vineyards. And even in the bottom left corner, you can see a couple of deer that are just sort of meandering. And we get so many deer coming through the property. It's incredible. Every time I drive home, I go down the hill from Mount Boucherie here, and from the vineyard. And in the vineyards going down the hill, I almost always see deer just walking through and just grazing through there. There's so much incredible wildlife around here that is just unbelievable. I personally moved here from Calgary a few years ago, and really am not looking back and going back to Calgary, because it's just so wonderful here. Now, I was talking about Mount Boucherie on this hill. So this hill that we're on is an old extinct volcano. So when we created our property and all this architecture that went on here, it took about 5 years to do all the renovations here. And part of that was actually to dig into the mountain and create our cavernous show cellar, which is this here, right here. So this is dug right into the lava. And this goes down, I think it goes down 60, 70 feet, totally underground. Now, the whole idea of this cavern, of the show cellar, is to give you the impression that you're inside of a barrel. So you can see the arches on the top. And this, being underground like this, allows us to have natural humidity and natural temperature control in this whole area. And then this show cellar holds about 780 to 800 barrels. So that's quite a bit of wine, but that's only a fraction of what we have. We keep on property here close to 4,000 barrels at any one time. Most of them French, and we use them for all of our wines. Here goes, this is a great little segue to go into our organics. So I sort of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning there, how we've gone organic. And organic is the way that we really wanted to go. And it takes quite a process. It has taken us about 5-6 years of planning. And the last 3 years have been the actual formal certification of going organic. All of our northern properties, so our Naramata, De Hart, Fritzy's Vineyard, Symes Vineyard, all of those vineyards right now are fully organic as of last year. And as I said earlier, that by the end of this year, our vineyards down in the southern property and the rest of the Okanagan will be fully organic. And what does that mean, being organic? So what that means is we're not using any chemical herbicides or pesticides. We do still use some natural components to help in the vineyards. So some fertilization, we'll do some natural fertilization. We will do some mitigation of pests and insects by using natural processes, but it's all 100% natural, everything that is allowed by us to do that. So there's no chemicals being used. And what we've found is that the vineyards are becoming healthier. It's no longer looking just at the vine itself, but we're looking more broadly. So we're not looking at the vine, we're looking at the whole row of vines, and not just the whole row of vines, but what's in between all of the vines as well, right? So it really is a more holistic sort of sense of looking at the whole property as one ecosystem, as opposed to just looking at what's happening with this one vine right there and there, right? So there's a very, very intense sort of method to it. What that translates into is a little bit more time, care, and attention taken into the vineyard itself. So if we're going to do something that will act sort of as a herbicide for any sort of little insects that we don't want happening there, we're going to look at, we may need to do a little spraying of some organic substance, but we'll have to do it more often, 3 or 4 times, as opposed to once and then forget it when you're using chemicals. So we're doing a little bit more work in the vineyards, but in the end, we don't get the runoff going into our lakes, and we're getting a healthier vineyard, and we're getting healthier grapes. And what that is doing is the grape flavors are just even more intense now, right? It really, really is. There's a lot of flavor coming through out of those grapes. And we're seeing that. The proof is in the bottle of wine, right? We are starting to see more of our wines being much more flavorful, more robust. If you think about organic fruit, if you buy an organic strawberry versus a Costco gigantic strawberry, the smaller, more organic strawberry has a lot more flavor than the big Costco grape. Although the Costco grape looks great, or Costco strawberry looks great, it doesn't have the same flavor. And that's what we're seeing in our grapes as well when we're doing these. So this is just an example of just down in our vineyards here. Part of the vineyard that we're doing, the grape growing, all organics and letting them sort of grow. Here, what we're seeing is some of the Cabernet Sauvignon grape leaves coming up. We do a lot of looking through the vineyard. We do a lot of taking a look at what is happening in the vineyard. We're in the organic method, where we're doing more of the holistic sort of look of the vineyard itself. Here, we're taking a look as well with technology. Down here, we will have monitors throughout the vineyard, and they will allow us to see what the temperature is happening there. We have our drones. We have a series of drones that we actually fly over all of our vineyards multiple times a week. And those drones allow us to see the health of the vine itself. You know, is there too much water? Is there too much sun? Is there an insect problem? Is there an issue with any of that sort of anything? And just by a flyover and changing the lens and changing the scope of what we're looking for, it allows us to actually see what's happening in the vineyards, right? That, and then also our hands going through there, right? So we do a lot of hand picking of our vines itself. And sometimes we'll have our pickers go through the vineyards, and they'll do one row or one side of a row, and then they'll come back a week later, they'll do the other side of the row. So there's a lot of care and attention taken into our vineyards. So this is actually a Sauvignon Blanc grape here. So you can see the grape cluster of the Sauvignon Blanc. So this is really kind of cool from what we're talking about here. Let's try our second wine. Let's just grab into our second wine. Our second wine that we have is our Reserve Meritage, the 2019 Reserve Meritage. Now, the Reserve Meritage is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and a bit of Cabernet Franc. So when we see Meritage on the label, we're looking at the Bordeaux varietals, and that's what we have here in this one. So this one has a beautiful ruby red color to it. It is just, it's not super dense, but it has a nice color to it. And then on the nose, wonderful sort of blackberry, black currant, a little bit of spice in there. if you don't want to open up a second bottle of wine, you don't have to. Please don't feel that you need to get into it. And if you didn't want to drink any of the wines right now, that's fine too. That's great. You know, this is just to enjoy and relax and have a good time. Mm. Oh yeah, so wonderful sort of flavors. The black currant again coming through on there. The raspberry, dark raspberry coming through, and that some spice, some cedar spice coming through, almost like a humidor sort of spice coming through on that. And that's coming through on with a little bit of the French oak in there. So here we are. We're picking up some of the grapes down at the far end of the valley. And like I was saying, it's all hand harvested, hand selected, down for our terroir wines. And here you can see some of our vines, how they are haven't been pruned yet. So this is just before we've gone through, and we'll do a little bit of cutting back of the vines, just so there's not as much intense vigor of the grapevines itself, the leaves itself. We'll prune it back a little bit. I think the next picture shows a little bit more pruning here. Yeah, here you can see. So very meticulous in their pruning, and allows to have the sun and the airflow to come through on there, right? So we're not going to get any mold or mildew happening, and we want a nice air breeze coming through there, but we also want the sun to be hitting on the grapes itself. You can see how the sand, so it's very sandy down at this neck of the woods. So this is down south. I think this is down by our jagged rock vineyards here. And down here, it's very, very sandy. And that is also part of what makes the Okanagan so spectacular for growing grapes. Grapes themselves, they don't want to have anything that is too compact where the water sort of stays in there. They don't want to have the vines or they don't want to have soil that is very rich in nutrients. They want to be able to struggle. They want the vine roots to really dig down deep and seek out water, seek out nutrients. And that's with the grass or with the sand, they can do that, and they can dig down farther and further and further. The more that they stretch and the more that they actually strive for it and are under stress to do this sort of stuff, the better quality of the grapes comes out, right? Here we're doing a little bit of irrigation down at the south end. Predominantly, we do more drip irrigation. You can see on the vine on the left there, you can see that little black tubing down there. That's the drip irrigation. And earlier on, I was talking about the organics and how we're doing the organics down here. What we're doing now is we're actually creating our own sort of fertilizer tea, as it were. We've actually sourced and are paying a company for their patent so we can actually produce it on site, a fertilizer tea. And what's awesome about this is we can create so much fertilizer that's rich in nutrients and nitrogen for the soil and for the plants, is that we can actually feed it through the irrigation tubing here. So we can actually spot irrigation and spot fertilize each one of the vines, as opposed to spreading it out and losing a lot of the nutrients. Here we can actually be very, very specific and very site oriented in putting it into there. Great grapes here. So this is just coming up to the time here right now for them to be about to pick this here. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about a new wine that we're actually going to be bringing out this year, and it's our natural Merlot. So there's been a bit of a trend recently for natural wines, and by natural wines, I mean wines where we're not doing really anything other than pressing and allowing the wine itself to work on itself. So we don't add any yeast or anything to it. We just press the grapes and do that. On the outside of the grape there, you can see that little sort of the light blue color on there, and you can see the little white flecks on there. Those white flecks are actually yeast. And that is natural yeast that just floats in the air, and it's glommed onto the grapes here. So for our natural wines, we will be selecting these grapes, or not these grapes specifically, but we'll select the grapes. We will press them, and that natural yeast will start the fermentation process. And we had an incredible season this year. When we picked the grapes last year, that it's going to be, we're so looking forward to it. The winemakers are so on board with this. It was a great little experiment that really worked out well. And we're looking forward to having our first natural wine this year, a natural Merlot. A little bit different flavor. There is all stainless steel, and then at the very end, there's a little bit of oak aging on it, but it's 100% not doing anything to the grape itself, not changing anything, just letting the juice itself do everything from start to finish. So these are some of the grapes that we have growing. You can see how the grape vines are reaching up, but all the grapes are all down at the bottom there. So that's where all the fruit is hanging. So everything that goes above that is more for the growing condition for the grapes itself, and allowing them to get all the chlorophyll and everything that the vine itself is putting into there. Now, we will go through the vineyard every once in a while and we'll drop some of the fruit just so that we can concentrate all of that energy into fewer bundles. Here we have about 4 or 5 bunches per vine itself. So this is a wonderful photo heading straight down at the very, very end. That's the US border. We had purchased about 500 acres down at the US border there. Like when I say the US border, there's a chain link fence. You can stick your hand across and shake your hands with your neighbor, and that's it. That's all there is. I wouldn't recommend doing that because the Border Patrol does come out if you get too close to the border. But we are right there, right across the border. And here's another example of the technology that we have down there. You can see those windmills, sort of the two-prong windmills there. We have those set up that you can access by the viticulturalist's phone. When the weather gets down to about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, there will be an alert sent to the viticulturalist, and this will give him an opportunity to start those machines up. And when we start those machines up, what we're doing there is we're going to invert the air. So we got the cold air down below and we have warm air up above, and those windmills will just switch that air around so that it'll bring the temperature up from the ground. It'll bring it up so that the vines don't freeze, because we don't want the vines to freeze at all. Any of that sort of frost is detrimental. And so this helps us out. And because we have this technology, I know some other wineries and other vineyards have got similar technology or similar windmills there. It's sort of been said that once we start up our windmills, all the other windmills start up as well, because obviously we know something about what's going on here, because we're very, very fortunate with all the technology that we have here. So this is at the very tail end of harvest. See, these are some of the last grapes that are just hanging on. We're just letting them ripen, further ripen. Some of the grapes take a little bit longer to ripen. Cabernet Sauvignon needs just a little bit more hang time. So this is like near the very, very end of its life. And this would be just at around the end of September, beginning of October time. We have had some of our harvests go all the way to, I think, the first day or two of November, but very rarely do we go past the middle of October. So selecting all the grapes by hand, picking them all up. And then from here, we'll bring it into the winery itself. So here we'll transport them all, and all the grapes will be transported into buckets like this. And then this is coming into a wonderful piece of machinery that we have. It's called an optical sorter. So here we see the hopper of our grapes being all poured into a hopper, and from here it'll go into a conveyor belt that'll carry this all up, and this will take this and then put this into a mechanical destemmer, a very, very, very gentle destemmer. So what it does is it will pick all the grapes off of each one of these bundles without breaking the grapes itself. So it's very, very gentle. Very, very soft on this. And then it takes out the stem, and then it'll go from there. It goes into the next step. It goes into a conveyor belt that shakes the grapes. Let me just go back one here. It'll shake the grapes onto a conveyor belt that will then travel, that conveyor belt will then travel at 3 meters per second, which is about 100 kilometers an hour. So this belt is going super fast, and you have 90 little channels with grapes all across this. And over the span of about 4 feet, 5 feet, there is a camera that will inspect each and every one of those grapes traveling at that speed. And if that grape does not meet our standard for what we're looking for that tier, it will shoot it out into a discard pile with a puff of air. So that way we can actually get exactly the grapes that we want, right? No leaves will go through, no stems will go through. If there's any mold or if there's any insects that have decimated one of the grapes itself, it'll shoot it out. So we get just the best grapes coming through on that. And then from there, we'll take it and we'll put it into another tank or another vessel that we'll put it up above our tanks, and then we'll drop it into the bottom of the tank here itself. And we will naturally let the grapes crush each one of themselves. So each one of those grapes has not been broken yet. So they're all fresh grapes, just like you've picked it off a grape stalk yourself. And so that natural pressure is going to gently press the juice out of those grapes. So it's much more gentle, it's much more soft. You're not going to get any harsh bitterness coming through, because if you use something that's a little bit harsher on that, sometimes you might crush this, any stalks that have gone through, or any of the little pips inside of there, inside of the grapes. Those pips can have some nice, some bitterness to it. And so then you're just getting natural pressure on those, right? And so those pips don't release any of that harsh bitterness to it. The little white specks that are on there, that is dry ice. So after we've put the grapes into there, we will sprinkle it with a little bit of dry ice. And what that dry ice does is it displaces the oxygen that's above it, right? So it'll create a nice layer of CO2 down at the very bottom. And what that CO2 does is it stops any sort of microbial action happening, right? So any insects that have gone through, they won't be able to survive in that, and any microbes won't be able to start doing anything yet until we say it's time for it to start fermenting. And after we've done all the juicing and all that, we'll take all the skins, and before we've gotten to this sort of stage, what we will have done is we will have done one of two methods. One is called a pump over, where we will actually take juice from the bottom of the tank, and we'll have a hose that will come up to the very top of the tank and spray the top of the skins with that wine. All those skins will sort of, as the juice has been pressed out, all those skins will float up to the very top. And with that hose, we'll actually make sure that it stays wet and stays moist, but we'll also push it down gently. So that's one method. And then the other method, if we want just a little bit more extraction out of it, is what we call a press. And it's sort of like a French press for coffee, where it has just a big pallet at the top, and it just pushes down on all those skins down to the very bottom. And we'll do that a couple of times a day. And what it does is that those skins get in contact with the wine. And some people don't know that red wine gets its color from the skins itself. So you can press the juice out of a red wine and you can get white juice out of that. But if you leave the skins in with the juice itself, the skins is where the color comes from. So we'll leave the skins in there, and we'll leave it in there for a couple of weeks, and that'll get that extraction of the color out of there. And that's where we get our red wine color. Alternatively, if you wanted to make a rosé wine, you would just leave the skins in there for just a short term. So you may leave it in there for an hour or 2 hours, and that's where you'll get that pink sort of hue out of a rosé wine. And white wine, you just press and let the juice roll off. So there's no skin contact other than just that initial contact with white wine. So just so you know. And then after we've taken all those skins, we'll put them into that basket press. And then this is the press here, and they'll press that and the juice will run off really, really thick like this. And what's awesome about this juice, it's like tannins on steroids, right? So because of all the skins there, not only does it impart color, but it also imparts the tannins. And the tannins is that dry chalkiness that you get out of a wine. So this is after we've pressed the juice out of that, we'll push it and we'll squeeze it a little bit more. And this is what we might use in our wines. If they need just a little bit more boost of tannins, we may put in a little of this, but it's just like tannins and steroids, which is just an incredible sort of thing. And you can see the color here, right? It just stains everything. Some of our winemakers will be tasting for hours a day, and people think that's such a glorious job, but it's difficult to be tasting wines, 200 barrels or 200 samples of wines in a day without first, getting your teeth all red and your lips, or even just the fatigue on your tongue for tasting all those wines in one day. It's quite amazing. And we have a wonderful team here. We have 4 winemakers foreign winemakers that we have here, and 3 of them are women. And our chief winemaker, Corey, just started, has been here with the winery, I think, for 4 or 5 years now. And she was promoted to chief winemaker just at the end of last year. And we're very happy. She's overseeing our whole winemaking process and our release of our wines and all that sort of things. I'm going to open this up right now to some Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing this because I think that's the end of my presentation here. Yeah, that's the end of my quick little presentation there. I'm going to ask some questions, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out, call out, and I'm going to put out the chat as well. What was your favorite wine? I guess did anyone have a favorite wine, a red, a white?
Yeah, I think Patrick Flannery had something to say. Pat, we can't hear you.
Did I just get muted? Hey,
go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, Patrick.
When I do the wine tours in down here in St. Catharines, they always talk about this wind off the bench thing, where the air comes over the escarpment around Niagara. I don't know if you've ever been there. You probably have. And
I have.
And yeah, and it does something good for the grapes. I don't know. It keeps the air moving or something so they don't freeze up. Do you guys have a similar effect there?
So when I showed you the windmills down in the south end of the Okanagan, where we had a few of those windmills, down in the southern part of the Okanagan, it's a little bit more flat, right? And that's where you have the issue where you can have that cold wind sitting down low. And cold wind, you don't want it to freeze, right? So that's where we have the windmills. So you'll have that inversion, right? So we'll shift in some of the warm air that's above in with the colder air down below. So we'll get that. In the northern properties, what we're quite fortunate of in the northern part of the properties is it's a little bit more on an angle, right? So so we're more hilly on this side. So we don't necessarily have that wind coming over the bench, but we are on slopes here on the northern part of the property. So really any wind will just keep on flowing down. So if there's a cold wind that's hanging out, it'll go down towards the lake. And then that's where the lake will mediate any cold wind. It acts like a heat sink, right? So any cold wind that comes down will warm up to what the ambient temperature of the lake is. So it's really quite unique. In the wintertime, in the early spring, you can see the frost and you can see the snow on the side, on both sides of the valley, but you can see that about 400 or 500 feet up from the water's edge, there's a definitive line where the frost is stopped. So above it, it'll be white, and below it, it will be fully open and green. So in the south, we do have something where we need to fix with the wind. In the north, we don't, because of the slope of the vineyards itself.
Any chance of ice wine there, or is it too warm?
No, we do ice wine every year. Obviously, with ice wine, where you need to have a certain temperature, so it needs to be at -8 minimum for a certain period of time. 2 years ago, so not last year, but the year before, we had vines just growing down the hill from here, where we had vines growing. We had a couple of rows of Riesling that were going to be picked for ice wine. And just before Christmas, it was just starting to get cold enough. And then just after Christmas, the Christmas break where some people were gone, It was cold enough, but when we were about to go out to the vineyard, we realized that the deer had broken down the fence and had eaten all the ice wine grapes, because it's just like candy to a kid, just full of so much intense sugar that they just decimated the whole vineyard, the whole crop for that year. And some people were saying that was a $1 million lunch for the deer. This past year, it had gotten cold enough, but then it turned around and we had a warm wind coming off of the coast, and then it came. So it was down to -10. And by the time we got to the vineyard itself to start picking, it had all of a sudden gone up to like -6, -5. And then it was like at just hanging out at freezing, which wasn't cold enough, not by ice wine standards. So in the valley, some areas did pick some. By the time the next freeze had come, it had thawed and frozen too much, so it was just mush. So this year we didn't pick any either, right? So, but some people in the Okanagan Valley did pick some ice wine.
They've got a lot of different soil types down here. Are you guys pretty uniform there, or does it change a lot?
It changes a lot, right? So in the northern properties, on the one side of the lake, we're volcanic sort of overflow. On the other side, it's granite. And the entire valley of the lake part, so where the lake is itself, this used to be a glacier, and it actually was four times it was a glaciated field here. And down about 2/3 of the way, there's a place called Mcintyre's Bluff, which is actually the narrowest part of the whole valley. And this is a bluff that was sort of coming across the valley and was stopping any of the glaciers from coming through. And what had happened, and I don't know when this was, but what had happened was at one point, one of those glaciers had actually ruptured, and the lake that was here and behind it had flowed all the way into the southern properties. So what that did was that created all that sand and all that silt all through the southern properties. So way down south, down past Mcintyre's Bluff, is nothing but sand. It's just sand, 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 deep gravel beds and sand. And anything further north has got a little bit more granite and some silt from the bottom of the lakes that would have been underneath the glaciers as well. So we do have varying styles of different soil types down here through the valley.
Did you guys get that big Asian beetle problem way back, what was it, 2000 or something? Remember that?
The pine beetle you're talking about?
No, there was the, well, maybe you didn't get it. You'd remember if you did. It ruined a whole crop out here in about 2000. They had, they look like ladybugs, but they don't have as many spots.
Oh, yeah?
They're called Asian beetles, and they were all over the grapes, and it destroyed several crops.
Yeah, around 2000. I don't know. I moved out here in the 2018. Okay. But I've been in the wine business long enough. I would have thought I would have heard of something like that in the Okanagan here as well, because I've been in the wine business in Calgary for 20, 30 years, right? So I had my own store and I would have talked to people. So I don't think we had the Asian beetle problem out here.
That was probably an Ontario thing. Yeah, I don't know if they got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Bruno's accusing me of writing an article. Hey, I might. Thanks, Ingo. I should let somebody else in.
Patrick, thanks very much. Thanks for the questions. Great questions. Anybody else have any questions?
Fantastic.
Do we have any more questions?
Oh, come on. Who had a favorite wine? Who enjoyed the white wine?
Okay, so before we move forward, I want to thank again our sponsors, because I obviously remembered and I didn't get a message right now. But so thanks a lot to Screenco, JSA, Atlantic Windows, Ultrafab, Caldwell, Tremco, Everlast, and Swiss Pacer. And starting now, what we'll do, Ingo, like you can stick around with us. Anyone here on the call can stick around with us as long as they want. And we can just talk about wine, talk about anything else. And that's exactly at the same moment where I stopped the YouTube broadcast for obvious reasons. So thanks a lot for attending Spring Conference 2021. And hope a lot of you guys will stick around. And now you talk.
Does anybody have any questions about the organic?
Go.
No,
Start with that one.
Yeah. Does Mission Hill have a German-style sweet Riesling?
So we have, right now we have our reserve Riesling, which is an off-dry style of Riesling. So just a little bit off-dry, not a sweet style, but an off-dry. We do our Riesling Ice Wine, which is quite sweet. I think that one comes in at 257 grams of residual sugar per liter. So it's quite sweet. And we are just releasing in the middle of June our single vineyard organic Fritzi's Vineyard Riesling, which is more of a drier style of Riesling. So more than a cabinet, I guess, higher than a cabinet sort of style. Does that answer your question, Al?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I think the Riesling is available in the LCBO. If not, it's available on our website, and we do free shipping all across Canada, even for one bottle. Oh, I like that sweater. I like that sweatshirt.
Let's go.
It's happening. We've got worlds colliding here, man.
Oh boy.
Good. There's too
Listen, you know what? I've never seen. An old man like me has never seen the Leafs play Toronto. Toronto play Montreal in the playoffs.
That's true.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
I'd love to know who's seen that.
I heard an interesting statistic today that all the members on both teams weren't even around when they last played each other.
Oh, probably.
They weren't even born. I think one of the guys was 7 months in the tummy, but not even quite born when the last time they played. So I'm looking forward to it.
Terry's got Canucks in 5. I don't think he's in good shape.
I get kicked out every time I make a comment. I get shut down.
Do you think you'll ever get to the point where you have enough volume or yield, for lack of a better term, to import and expand, or to export?
No, I mean, the issue really is the Okanagan is only about 10,000 acres, right? So it's a finite amount of land. So what is fortunate here in the Okanagan is any land that is agricultural right now cannot be developed for housing or anything like that, right? It has to stay agricultural. So the only way we can get more grapes is if we take over some orchards or any other agricultural land and convert that into vineyards itself. But really right now we're sitting around 10,000-ish. And of that, like I said before, we're about 1,400 for Mission Hill itself. And really that production, it doesn't allow us to really to go much beyond the Canadian borders, right? We are pushing some of our wines internationally. We have gotten some awards in the Wine Spectator down in California, in the US. And the only way that the Wine Spectator will allow you to be in the Wine Spectator is if your wines are available in the US. So some of our wines are available down south, but not in mass quantity, right? So not in a lot of quantity. And we are just putting some of our wines now also into the UK. So beyond that, it really is supply and demand, and we can fulfill our demand right now pretty much domestically, right? So we do have a little bit outside, but it's not so much going beyond that, right? We do want to have exposure because we are a world-class winery, and we have wines that do sit in that echelon, right? They are world-class wines, but we just don't have the volume that we could do anything in a mass sort of way. So hope that answers your question, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 76, and I like Pinot Grigio. And from Australia, I like Pinot more for older people.
And you know what? I'll tell you right now, in the Okanagan, the most widely planted grape is the Pinot Gris. So, and Pinot Noir, we make some incredible Pinot Noirs here in the Okanagan. And it's all from...
I said Pinot more.
Oh, Pinot more.
Sarah Lothar, yeah.
Well, on the lighter side.
Oh, you got him good.
You got me. Yeah, you got me.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Too soon to be like, I love you, man, to Lothar?
Fun.
Sorry.
Stefan, are we